The story begins in a deep, dark dungeon in a palace. A woman with pink hair, who we learned is named Hillis, is held prisoner in a dark, dirty cell. We see Hillis talking to a young man with pink hair. The young man is asking our protagonist, the pink-haired girl in the dungeon, to please die in Gabriel's place. The scene shifts to our protagonist Hillis giving an explanation of how things got to this point. Learn the man that she's speaking to is her brother, who loved by everyone and nicknamed the Prince of Roses. His name is Ricardo Odin. We learned that Ricardo has betrayed and hurt our protagonist's heart too many times, and she is fed up. Hillis asks Ricardo what he means by dying in place of Gabriel. Why should she have to die in the place of somebody else? Isn't she also his sister? Just like Gabriel is his sister, she is his sister as well. Why does he continue to betray her to protect someone else, and not even care about protecting her, his own flesh and blood? Hillis, or protagonist, argues that she's already in prison in Gabriel's place. Why should she also have to die in Gabriel's place as well? Ricardo claims that Gabriel is too weak to survive prison, so they had no choice but to make Hillis take the blame. Hillis then asks, is she not a person? Does Ricardo not think it's hard for her to endure this horrible imprisonment? Why should she just accept to be tortured like this for something that she didn't even do? Hillis then says something strange to Ricardo. She states that this is the 7th time she died and repeated the same life. Ricardo states that yes, she has died many times and always goes back in time to begin at the same place. Ricardo then states that if she dies again in this life, she'll just return back in time to that same moment in the past, so he's begging her to just die in Gabriel's place. Hillis cries, bitter tears, thinking that all the words that he says to her are so hurtful and cruel. Hillis goes on to state that once she told Ricardo about going back in time and repeating her life, he hated her and told her she was full of lies, and only lying so that people would pay attention to her. But now that he wants something from her, he brings it up, telling her to die. I just go back in time when he ridiculed and insulted her before. Hillis sorrowfully thinks to herself that she didn't expect Ricardo to fix what went wrong and save her from this prison cell. But she did everything she could do for him. She even took punishment for what Gabriel did. Hillis knows that she won't be loved as much as Gabriel is loved, but at least she wanted her family to, even if it was just one time, say something kind and warm to her. Police continues to cry to Ricardo, literally saying that she is his sister too, so why is he so cruel to her? Ricardo responds by yelling at Hillis on, accusing her of always being selfish. He tells Hillis that she is also Gabriel's sister, so just this once Hillis should sacrifice herself for her younger sister Gabriel. At least cries, saying that she can't do this anymore to her brother. His knees begging her to die for Gabriel, saying that this is the first and last favor that he will ever ask of her, defending it, saying that even if she dies, it won't really be the end of her life because she will just go back in time again. She has to feel the pain of death for a few seconds anyway. It's just a little moments of pain, and then she can just go back to the past. Death and die for the sake of... Why can't she just endure the pain of death and die for the sake of Gabriel just one more time? She's already died 7 times. What's one more death? She died so much. It's probably not even that painful. She's probably used to it. Ricardo says that in her next life, he will save Hillis first. Hillis starts bitterly laughing, completely broken at this point. She states that Gabriel is only an adopted sister, while she is his sister by blood, and he doesn't even care for her, his biological sister, as much as an adopted sister, and with that the little hope and love that she hold on to for her family as she sacrificed her last 7 lives for them who is gone. She turns to Ricardo and tells him that he's no longer her brother, and then he talked. He had never been a brother to her. Hillis states that after living 7 lives, she finally sees him for what he is, nothing but scum. She states that from now on, she will abandon them. The next scene shows Hillis returning back to the past after her death and starting her 8th life. She wakes up, groggy and sick of constantly regressing and going back in time to her terrible family. There's a lot of noise and chaos in her surroundings because apparently a terrible and dangerous beast is on the loose and everyone is running and hiding to not get attacked by this dangerous beast. Receive her brother, Ricardo won right past Hillis, not worrying about her safety or trying to help her at all, and straight towards Gabriel to save her. He grabs Gabriel, not even looking back at Hillis or caring whether she lives or dies. And Hillis, he's left alone with a dangerous monster. Hillis laughs at the unfortunate encounter, beginning her 8th life. We see Ricardo holding on to Gabriel and watching as Hillis is about to be attacked. Ricardo is shocked when Hillis uses magic in the form of thorn-filled vines to restrain and subdue the monster. Ricardo then asks in shock how Hillis was able to perform the flowering. Apparently the flowering is the magic power that runs in the Enoden family and is pasted to the family hair. Ricardo is shocked that his sister Hillis was able to awaken his power and not him. Hillis then turns to Ricardo, admonishing him for being the worst. Instead of being concerned for her safety and well-being, like a decent person, he's more concerned about how she was able to have this extraordinary power, not even caring that he abandoned her to die. Hillis goes on to claim that Gabriel is the one who wanted to buy this monster, and is the reason why this monster is even here in the first place. Hillis states that Gabriel is the one who got close to the monster's cage, even though everyone cautioned her not to, and Gabriel is the reason for all the danger of the monster getting loose and causing all this trouble. Yet no one seems to remember that all of this is Gabriel's fault. Ricardo tries to defend Gabriel by scolding Hillis about how she could say such things when Gabriel looks so shocked. Hillis responds to Ricardo telling him that he is nothing but trash, and she has always known that to be true, so he should just go away and not disturb her anymore. We learn in this world, therefore, noble families, they have been around since ancient times. These families are the Enodens of spring, the Kalikias of summer, the Vrgtes of autumn, and the Parvanans of winter. Each one of these families is the embodiment of their season and have special magic powers that coincide with the family season. Unfortunately, over the years, the purity of each family's blood has faded, causing the magic power of the families to lessen with each generation. We learned that the High and Anoaden family, luckily, is still quite strong, but even though the magic power of the Anoaden family is so powerful, only one family member is able to receive that magic power per generation. We learned that in this generation, everyone expected Ricardo to be the one to receive that magic power and inherit the title, power, and position of the head of Enoden. Instead, we find that our protagonist Hillis is the one who has received the magic power for this generation. And no matter what, no one else in the family will be able to receive this power but her until she dies. The next scene shows Ricardo trying to cheer Gabrielle up as she cries like a brat. She continues to cry and complain, asking Ricardo how he could do this to her. Gabrielle is apparently upset with Ricardo because this afternoon he paid attention to Hillis instead of her. The door opens, and we see the current head of the Anoaden family, Diego Anoaden, walk into the room. Gabriel gets up, whining, and runs straight to him. Diego holds his arms out for Gabrielle, asking if she is okay and fussing over her. Diego then turns to Ricardo, asking if the rumors he heard about the incident this afternoon are true. Ricardo responds that yes, there was an accident and he has something that he needs to tell their father. Ricardo, with a grim look on his face, tells his father that Hillis how to flowering, and he's the one to inherit the magic powers of the family for this generation. Diego tells Ricardo to stop joking. There's no way Hillis could have a walk in the family's power. He argues that it must have been Ricardo's power that she's confusing for Hillis's. Ricardo does not agree. He recalls that every step Hillis took caused roses to bloom at her feet. Diego then gets even more angry, asking Ricardo if he understands the gravity of his words. Only one person per generation can receive the magic power of the Enoden family, and the next head of this family must be him. Ricardo must be the one to receive the power for this generation. The scene ends with Diego vowing to find the truth of what is happening for himself. The next day begins with our protagonist Hillis in the family's dining room eating breakfast at the dining table. The maids walk in to see her at horrified that she's in the dining room, and they question her about what she is doing there. Hillis then responds, asking if she is not allowed in her own family's dining room. She asks the maids why the table is only set for 3 people when there are 4 people in the family. In her mind, surmising that they must have only set the table for Diego, Ricardo, and Gabrielle, not considering Hillis worth the effort of setting a plate for. Hillis then takes a seat at the dining table to the dismay of the servants. She begins eating the steak that was sat out on the table as the maids start shouting and yelling that she can't eat that because it's for the Lord. Maid then tell her to leave, and they will deliver her food to her room later. Hillis refuses and continues to eat. She doesn't states that from now on, she will be eating all her meals in the dining room at the table. As Hillis continues with her meal, she thinks about how good the food is, not remembering the last time she ate something that tasted good as when she was in prison. She was barely allowed a sip of water. She thinks to herself that this is so much better than living in a horrible dungeon, and that she refuses to go back to that awful life. After finishing her meal, she turns to the servants and scolds them, telling them that they are petty for trying to use food to discriminate against her. She tells them that she knows they always send over leftovers and scraps to her room, and asked if they thought she wouldn't notice. She tells the server and staff from now on they better make sure that her meals are the same quality as the meals served to the rest of the family. Upon leaving the dining room, Hillis runs into her father and brother. They both look irritated, asking her why she's coming out of the dining room. She ignores them and continues on her way. Her father turns around, getting further agitated, and tells her to stop yelling, that she should stop and listen to him. Hillis then stops, turns around to face her father, and asks him why. Her father just stutters, confused as to how she has the nerve to even talk back to him, stuttering in his surprise. Hillis responds that it's unusual to tell someone to stop for no reason, so if her father is asking her to stop, then he should have a reason for asking her to stop. Her father just continues to get angry, yelling at her and asking her, how dare she talk to him like that? She responds, saying that he clearly has nothing to say to her, considering how confused and stuttered his words are, and in the future to not stop her for no reason. If he has nothing to say, because it's not good to waste other people's time, especially because they both can't stand the sight of one another. Her father just continues to yell, indignant and enraged, as Ricardo tries to calm him down and guide him into the dining room. When Diego walks into the dining room and realizes that Hillis had already eaten some of the food, he gets angry all over again and orders that Hillis be brought before him. In the next scene, we see a maid frantically run into Hillis's bedroom, telling her to wake up. We learn that the girl is Hillis's personal maid named May, and is very vile and terrible to her. The maid May is surprised that Hillis sees already awake, and Hillis reminisces that it's been a while since she heard that rude tone of her maid. The maid continues to insult and admonish Hillis, telling her that she's always lazing around doing nothing. Well, Hillis thinks that she's tired of this maid treating her like a weak trash, and she wonders if the maid thinks that she's her boss instead of the other way around. We learn that this maid is always bullying and belittling Hillis and has been this way to her, and also one of her previous lies. Hillis then decides there in the 8th life things will be different. Hillis tells the maid to bring her some water to wash her face. The maid May is taken back and upset, wondering if Hillis realizes who she's talking to. Hillis, not backing down, says she's obviously talking to her maid as there's no one else in the room. The maid then leaves the room, confused, wondering why Hillis is behaving differently this morning. The maid returns to Hillis with a bowl of water that Hillis then carries and pours on top of the maid. We then see a series of flashbacks showing the maid abusing and mistreating Hillis. We learn that the maid was upset when she was first assigned to be the personal maid to Hillis, as Hillis was not valued or considered important in the family. But when the maid realized how meek and easy to bully Hillis was, she began to be happy with her job, as it was nice to be able to boss around on Noble. The flashbacks end and receiver, maid looking at Hillis in shock, confused as to why Hillis poured the bucket of water on her. Hillis then tells the maid that she's very rude for bringing cold and dirty water for her to wash up with. Hillis scolding the maid, telling her that she's so incompetent that if everyone knew what a bad job she was doing, no one would feel sorry for the maid, even if Hillis beat her and threw her out. And if she threw the maid out, the maid would never be able to get another job, as nobody would ever hire a maid who was impudent and disrespectful to her master. The maid is shocked, as in the past Hillis was so weak and easy to bully, not even able to properly speak to her. But now she seems to be able to stand up for herself like she's a completely different person. Hillis then tells her that this is her last chance, and she had better get her warm, clean water before she cuts off her disrespectful hands. After washing up, we see Hillis looking at the old ill-fated hand-me-down cloths in her closet. We learn that Gabrielle would always get the most expensive high-fashion dresses, while Hillis was given scraps and hand-me-downs. Hillis decides that it's time. She gets some new clothes, as none of these hand-me-down scraps fit her any longer. Hillis uses magic to turn those jerry clothes into flower petals, shocking her maid with her display of power. Maid is shocked, thinking to herself that the rumors of Hillis inheriting the family's magic power must be true. The scene is interrupted by the butler barging into Hillis's room without knocking or announcing himself to tell her that the Lord wants to see her. Hillis thinks to herself how rude the butler is for coming into a lady's room without knocking or asking for permission. She didn't tell the butler that if her father wants to see her, he should come to her himself. The butler and other servants look at her in confusion, yelling and asking her if she's joking. Soon Diego, her father, bursts into the room, yelling that Hillis must be out of her mind, and that, for Ricardo's sake, he gave her some time alone, but he has had enough and can no longer stand her behavior. Hillis, not intimidated or scared at all, just smiles, angering her father even more. Ricardo, her brother, then shouts at Hillis to apologize to their father immediately for the incidents in the dining room. To watch our protagonist ask if she's not allowed to go into her own family's dining room, she done says that she didn't even want to wait for the family to enter the dining room and eat with them because the sight of the family would have ruined her appetite. Finally, fully enraged, Diego decides that he's going to teach our protagonist a lesson and summons thorn-filled vines with his magic. Diego claims he had been trying to take it easy on her as Ricardo had begged him for her sake, but he's had enough of her disrespect. To this, our protagonist wonders if Ricardo perhaps feels guilty for what he did to her when the monster escaped and is pleading with their father, for her sake, is his way of appeasing his conscience.
Hey guys, if you like the video, please share it, like, and subscribe to my channel, and I'll get to work on the next part of this video. Thank you. Goodbye.